So you want to learn how to bench real big?
Opening with 272 kilograms, that's 260. I mean,
look at that giant son of a bitch. Oh my God. Dude, that looks like a commercial bench pad.
He's a baby too.
Look at him wobble back and forth.
He's 20, I believe he's 22 years old.
Oh my God.
Woo!
Wow.
And you've come to the right place. You see, bench press is the king of the big three. You can't have a weak person that benches big because without a doubt, bench press dictates that you will have a bigger total. A study done by a single person on Instagram that I just believe outright said that the coefficient for bigger totals is directly proportional to how big your bench press is. And the bigger your bench press, the higher likelihood that you will have a bigger total. Bench is the king of the lift. See, these days, everyone and their mother deadlifts 700 pounds, and everyone's trying to cheat their way through to a bigger squat with those injured knee sleeves. But there's no way to cheat a bench press. So if you have a big bench, then you're actually strong. So before you start the bench press, you need a bench. There are a couple different kinds of setups that you can have in order to perform the bench press. The one that I have right here is a power rack. It's a power rack situated with a free bench for like dumbbell work and whatever, inlaid in the rack. Power racks are nice because you can also have the addition of safety pins, which you can insert inside of the power rack in order to make sure that you're safe. And you can also adjust the height of the hooks in order to have a preferred amount of distance for yourself to unrack the bar. The only negative of a power rack that I see is the inconsistency of where you place the bench. It's not that big of a deal. You just set up just as you would for a regular bench press. You unrack the bar from the rack and you perform your bench press. Another option that most gyms will have is a lone bench. It is a bench designed specifically for the bench press. It's got these uprights to hold the bar, and sometimes you'll be lucky enough that you'll be able to adjust the pin height so that you can have more customability with where you have your bar when you unrack the weight. Singular use benches are nice because a lot of times they'll have a platform attached to it so that a spotter can get a higher start position so that they can hand you off the bar. Another nice thing that these benches tend to have is a pretty nice bench pad. This one is rubber vinyl, I believe, and it is very sticky, which prevents me from sliding on the bench when I bench press. With this bench, since it's attached to the uprights, there's no variability when it comes to setting up the bench press. It's just already set up all the time. You just set up for a regular bench. You unrack the bar, and you perform your bench press. The final option when it comes to available bench presses that most gyms may have is a combination rack. This is a combo rack that is used in competition. A lot of powerlifting federations use combination racks in order to perform their bench press. So in a combo rack, the bench is not 100% attached, but there are guide holes in order for consistent setup of the bench. This one is also adjustable in height in order for you to set the hooks at a certain height that you will like to unrack the bar with. And that is done with this lever system, the same as adjusting the height for squats. Just like with the power rack and the lone bench, all you do when you finally want to bench is after it's all set up, you've got the bar that you want, all you do is you set up, unrack the bar, and perform the bench press. Now, that's not all the equipment available for the bench press, but it is standard across the board for what you can have. Some combo racks, such as the one right here, has what are called face savers. It is a safety precaution that is added to the combo racks in order to prevent you from dying if you miss a bench press. It's called a face saver because it attaches to the combo rack at a desired height in order to prevent the bar from dumping onto your face. Now that we've completed talking about the physical equipment that the gym will have in order for you to perform the bench press, the last bit of information we need that the gym will provide for you is the bar. This is a power bar. It's got a center knurl because it is intended to be performed for all three movements, for squats, bench, and deadlift, because it is a jack of all trades kind of bar. What is important about the power bar is it's got these rings in the knurls. This is where you can base your setup of your hand placement off of, because it is consistently away from the middle of the bar and the hubs of the bar. A powered bar is 45 pounds standard. The only other bar that you can use for bench press is a bench bar. A bench bar will be 50 pounds, slightly heavier, but it will not be any thicker than a power bar. So if you only have access to a power bar, that's no big deal, because the only difference between a power bar and a bench bar is the amount of weight that it takes to flex the bar. Now let's talk about the equipment, the personal support equipment that you can utilize for the bench press. The first piece of equipment, which I would highly suggest everyone use for the bench press because it is legal in competition, are wrist wraps. Wrist wraps have a Velcro on it in order for you to cinch off the wrist wrap onto your wrist. You put the wrap on your wrist, you pull it tight, and you want to support the joint in the back of your hand to prevent bending. And the Velcro of the wrist wrap just attaches to the wrist wrap, and it prevents bending as much as possible. This reduces the amount of stress on your wrist joint when performing the bench press, because you don't want to have any sort of bend in your wrist, otherwise you'll have inefficient power output towards the bar. The next piece of equipment, which you won't find a lot of times at the top level of people using, is a belt. What you do is you put the belt around your waist, and that allows a little bit more core support and preventing yourself from twisting while doing the bench press. There are two kinds of belts. There is the standard regular belt, a single prong belt like this, where you put the prong in the hole and it's nice and tight and you're able to push up against the belt. And the other option is a lever belt, where you put the prongs in the holes and you can either keep it like this, because you don't need much core support when it comes to bench press, or you can tighten it like this, which will give you a lot of support for the core in the bench press. The last thing you might want to consider when setting up for the bench press with your personal equipment is what footwear you have. Some people opt to have a heeled shoe, such as a squat shoe. You already got it on for squats, might as well keep them on for bench as well, because the angle of your foot with the ground is actually a pretty important part when it comes to bench press. I personally just like using my regular everyday shoe. Sometimes I'll even bench in Crocs, but I would not suggest that, especially if the inside of your Croc.
Oh, that's not good.
Especially if the inside of your Croc gets slippery from sweat. Now let's actually get to what it takes to do a bench press. Bench is the most technical lift of the squat, bench, or deadlift. A lot of people suck at bench because they don't consider everything that you need to consider in order to perform a successful bench press. So let's go over the things that you need to consider in order to perform a good bench press. That's going to be foot position, foot angle, elbow position, hand position, where the bar sits in your hand, as well as the most ignored thing in the bench press, which is how to actually perform leg drive. The first thing we're gonna go over right now is where your hands need to be positioned. Now, all bars have a neural ring on them, which allows you to select and have a consistent frame of reference where your hands go on the bench press. This ring is where you're going to set your hands up based off of. However, if you go outside of these rings, you are no longer performing a legal bench press in powerlifting. But you can go as narrow as you want. The width of your hands determines which set of muscles is going to be dominant during the bench press. If you have a narrower grip, it's going to be more tricep heavy. If you have a wider grip, it's going to be more pectoral heavy. I'm no biologist, but the pecs are bigger than the triceps, so a wider grip is going to be good. But you don't want to isolate the pecs, and you don't want to get rid of the tricep involvement, so going all the way out is not good. A hybrid between the two, where you are incorporating both the pecs and the triceps in a good amount while giving yourself enough room for your elbows to have a good and consistent pathway, is going to be your best bet. I would suggest playing around with which of your main fingers do you want on the ring. The narrowest that you should really go is pinky on the ring, and the widest is index finger on the ring. I personally have my ring finger on the ring. Foot position is going to be very important when it comes to the bench press. You have a couple options when it comes to where you place your feet and how you place your feet. When you set up for the bench press, you want to slide back beyond the bar and then have your feet planted on the floor and then swing through the bench so that you have a foot placement. Once you have that, you need to wiggle your feet while in contact with the floor in order to get where your foot position is. The two things you need to consider when it comes to foot placement is where you place your feet and the angle that your foot makes with the floor. A wider stance will be more stable. However, you will sacrifice the power in which you are able to control your leg drive. A narrower stance is less stable, but you'll have more power available to you when it comes to leg drive. The angle that your foot makes with the floor, it can either be angled upwards or angled in contact with the floor with your heel on the floor, as opposed to angled upwards with your heel off the floor, will determine whether or not you're able to utilize your heel in driving through the bar while bench pressing with your leg drive. Regardless of where you place your foot, you want your foot behind your knee. This will allow you to drive into the bar with good leg drive. The angle that you make with your foot in regards to each other is very important. If they end up pointing inwards, your leg drive is going to push you from side to side. So you want your feet to be parallel with each other so that your leg drive will push you back and forth on the bench. Now we've got this concept of leg drive. What do your legs do when you are benching? Because bench is an upper body movement, right? Wrong. Bench is a full body movement, so it's important to train your legs in addition to your upper body in order to have good, strong, consistent leg drive. But leg drive isn't exactly the way that you think it should be. A lot of people, when they start bench pressing, their leg drive will shoot their hips up. That is bad, and that will disqualify a lift when it comes to powerlifting. Leg drive should be a wholly horizontal movement. You should drive from your feet into your traps. It's going to look like this. You get all set up. You get your feet in place. You take the bar and you're already pushing horizontally into your traps. You want to keep this consistent throughout the lift. The wider you have your feet, the more uncomfortable it gets, but that's not bad. And when you press, when you take the weight, your weight gets distributed into your legs. This develops a stretch reflex that you're able to push back into the bar through your quads. When you're taking the bar down, you want to take the bar, the weight on the bar, through your lats, your back, and through your quads into your knees. So it's going to look like you're taking weight, spring loading your legs with the bench press. This is good leg drive. You're taking the weight into your legs and allows you to express that energy that you've stored up in your quads and your kneecaps and explode into the bar horizontally when you get the press command to perform the bench press. One of the things that a lot of people don't consider when they're performing the bench press is where the bar goes in their hand. See, like this, my hand is cocked back. I do have wrist wraps keeping my hand kind of rigid, but this is a bad way to take the bar. You want to roll your hand forward and make sure that your hand is not cocked and it is in the straight middle of your palm. This allows you to take the bar and press it without having to go through your joint, which is going to jar the bar through your joint going through the press. So you want to have this punching kind of motion in order to perform the bench press. Benching is a lot like a double-handed punch. You wouldn't want to punch someone with these front knuckles. So why would you have it so that the bar is in your hand, so that direction that you're punching is like this? You want to roll your knuckles forward and punch through the bar. This is going to prevent injury in your wrist as well as create efficiency of your pressing motion through the bar. There is such thing called suicide grip, where you do not wrap your thumb around the bar, rather you let the bar sit in your hand like this. Don't do that. Just straight up, don't do suicide grip. What happens is you take the bar, it gets like this, and then it rolls out of your hand, and I've lost control of the bar, and you die. That's suicide. I have on multiple occasions been spotting at a powerlifting meet where a lifter is using suicide grip and the bar rolls out of their hands at lockout. Once you have your feet and hands in order, the next thing you have to consider is your elbows, and that is heavily dependent on bar path. Bar path is the path that the bar takes when you are bench pressing. It's not a straight line up and down because that makes your elbows flare out. That puts the bar in a bad place and it puts too much strain on your pecs. This usually causes pec tears when people do this incorrectly. A good bar path is in arching J form. The position that you want to touch on your chest is somewhere on the top ab. You don't want to bring the bar down to nipple position. When your elbows flare, you don't have good explosive capabilities. You want your elbows to stay nice and tight in while you're benching so that you can apply a good explosive force to the bar. It's also important to note that you want the bar behind your elbows, because if it gets in front of your elbows, then you can drop it on yourself. So you want straight punching motion, and you want to bring the bar down to your top ab, likely close to the bottom of the top ab, so that your elbows are nice and tight, and you want to be flexing your lats at this point. This brings your chest up higher so that you can stay tight through the press. It's also important to consider what you do with your core while you're benching. It's a different brace than it is for squats and deadlifts because the position of your chest is highly important when you are benching. If you have an expanded chest, you do two things for yourself. You prevent yourself from twisting, and you also reduce the required range of motion to perform the bench press. What you want to do is you want to bring all your air to your core and hold it there. You want to expand your stomach as much as possible. Remember when you were a kid and you used to say, look how fat I can get, look at me, I'm pregnant, and you would just expand your belly? That's what you want to do. You want to expand your belly and push your belly out as much as possible. So to raise your stomach in an appropriate manner, you don't want your hips coming up. You will drive your feet into the ground in a horizontal direction into your traps. This will cinch your spine up a little bit, causing an arch to form, which will raise your chest. You want to tuck your lats into yourself and basically bring your lats into your back pockets. This means you want to bring your lats tight and down. You can see this motion brings your chest up naturally, and you want to expand your core as much as possible. So, leg drive, lats, core. You saw how that reduced my range of motion, and that's what you want to be doing on the powerlifting platform. Bench press is the most technical of the three lifts because it's a full body movement that you're operating with just your upper body. So it's easy to get away with getting lazy with the important parts, the things that you need to consider that are small but make a massive difference. The only thing we didn't talk about today was the arch, but the act of setting your feet and having your traps dig into the bench pad will set the appropriate arch. The act of swinging back, setting your feet, setting your traps, and then finding that good foot position will put your arch in your thoracic spine as opposed to your lumbar spine. It is completely safe. It is actually more safe for you to bench with an arch as opposed to a flat back, because the flexion in your spine is actually made for handling the loads as opposed to a flat spine. You put yourself at risk to fracture your vertebrae if you bench with a flat spine as opposed to the curve and the flexed spine of having an arch. So now we went over all the different things that you need to consider in order to perform a bench press. You've got your foot position, you've got your hand position, you've got the angle of your hands, you've got the angle of your feet, you've got the feet up or heels down, you've got the bar position, you've got the bar path, you've got your core, you've got your elbows, you've got your lats. There's a lot of these small details that can trickle through and get missed. But if you practice these all the time, you will end up with a bigger bench press technically. And then once your technical prowess is at a peak, then you'll start developing those natural strength, the muscles required naturally to perform the bench press, and you will end up with a bigger bench in the long run. Not only will it be a bigger bench, it'll be a safer bench, because bench can have some catastrophic failures. You've got a bar over your chest, core, and face. You don't want that to go south. So perform the bench press the correct way with all the cues that I talked about today, and you'll be able to be putting up big PRs in the future. So stick to it, know the technical prowess required to have a good bench press, and go and get your gains because you've earned them.